Hey y'all, I want to talk about parenting. I can talk about this endlessly, honestly. It is the most, I think it's the subject that confuses me the most. I feel like I have been a parent for a few years now and I still have no idea what I'm doing. And it doesn't get easier, it gets more confusing, right? I never thought I would wish back to when she was not toddlers, but oh gosh, babies, when they're a baby. I actually miss that time because back in those days, all she needs is milk, literally, like milk and sleep and whatnot. And then you change the diapers and they're good to go. But when they get a personality and they inherit your personality, oh my gosh, that is testing, honestly. Like you need patience for kids. But what I think it's more confusing is I have nothing in common with my kid. It's so bizarre. She really just bores me, if I'm being honest. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but children are boring. You know how, like, when they tell a story, it never ends. And well, who am I to talk? I'm sitting at a podcast talking nonsense. But honestly, it's like, how are they so uninteresting? I'm like, I thought people were born with personalities, but you actually have to teach them. Right? So whenever my kid is telling a story and it's so boring, sometimes I just cut her off. I'm like, listen, like, yo, everyone is going to bed. You're putting us all to bed. Right? But I say it differently because my mother, I call my mom for everything. So this was bothering me because I felt guilty. I'm like, oh gosh, I find my child to be boring. How horrible is that? So I called my mom. I said, Mom, when we were kids, you always seemed so engaged. So you made me think I was a cool person. I literally thought my mom was like, I was the best thing that ever happened to my mom. Do you know what I mean? So I called my mom. I said, Mom, she's so boring. I can't deal with it. You know, whenever we're in the car, she keeps talking. I'm not interested. I just zone out because I don't know what to tell her. And my mom said, I think all parents are like that. I said, what do you mean? You didn't like my stories? Guys, my life is a lie. Oh my days. I felt like I needed to do DNA tests. Oh my, I was so confused. So my mother did not think I was funny growing up. She dreaded my stories. She said, no, because you kept talking about the same thing again and again. And, you know, and whenever I talk about things, apparently I used to talk about them in very detail. Like a lot of details. I pity her. So now, because my mother said so, I try to be more patient with my kid. And also another thing that I don't understand is I think my child is middle class. It's horrible. It's horrifying because I just, you know, that's one of the reasons we have nothing in common because I grew up poor. So when I see the things, like I cannot relate to my child. When I see the things that she has and she has the audacity to complain for more. Listen, you know what she did? I can't talk shit about my kid. But we went on a holiday, right? We were staying at this hotel. We checked in and she looks at me and she said, Mom, are there no pools? There's no pool here. And I thought, my God, your mother is a refugee. What are you talking about a pool? So of course there was a pool, obviously. You know, like I don't travel and there's no pool. That's crazy. But I would never admit that to her. So to teach her a lesson, I said, there's no pools and you have to be grateful. Like not everything is a 5-star hotel. Do you know what I mean? Like your mother's a refugee. This could have been a refugee camp. Do you know how lucky you are? So I said to her, there's no pool. You're not going to swim at the pool. So I showed her the pool, but it wasn't a pool for her. Like she wasn't allowed to use it. To teach her a lesson. Of course, the issue was I struggled too. Like I couldn't get in the pool. Oh my God. So I thought like, that's when I realized, my God, my daughter is a higher class than I am. So now I have to deal with this shit, right? Now I have to act like I know what, like I can relate to her. I can't. So she was talking to her friends and I overheard because they were all at the house. So she was talking to her friend and her friend had never been to Indonesia, right? So my daughter's like, so you've never been to Indonesia? No. And you've never been to New York? No. Where do you go? I wanted to fight her. I'm like, oh my God. What are they saying? Why is she talking like this? Do you know who your mother is? I was so embarrassed. So when she, and the other girl, of course, you know, we all live in the same area. So she's also middle class. And she's like, no, my parents, they go to France and they go to Italy and they go to Spain. And my daughter was like, oh, I've never been to Italy, but I've been to Paris and I haven't been to Spain. So, you know, like the score was even, right? The other one was, both of them were a snob. But I was so embarrassed. So when the girl left, I told my kid, don't ever say that to people. Don't say, oh, why, didn't you go there? Where do you go? Like, I used to go in my backyard for the holiday. Whenever I wanted a holiday, my mom would send me to the garden. Go to the garden. There's your holiday. You know what I mean? So I think there's something that parents don't talk about is that when you become more successful, your kids are gonna have a life that you didn't have, and in some ways, it's good. I mean, I'm very happy that I can provide for my kids the thing that my parents couldn't provide, and I'm sure, I have things that my mother gave my parents, my mom and dad. They gave us things that they didn't have, but the gap is so much. And I'm afraid that my kid is going to become the kids that I hated growing up. You know, the ones who have their own room? That concept for me is still so confusing because my family, we're 9 kids. And then my mother adopted. I don't know why I keep saying my mother like my dad don't exist. I swear I have a dad, Now my parents adopted also. So we've always been a lot of kids. And then, the cousins. So I never had my own room. So I would go to this kid's house and one of them, she had her own room. And she had something in Norwegian we call lekestue. Guys, I was so poor, I didn't understand what that meant. So lekestue is basically a living room, but for toys. So like a playroom. I didn't understand play and living. I thought you either have a living room or you don't. I don't understand what is this playroom that you have. And so we're moving house and my kid was like, Mom, are we getting more room so I can have a playroom? Oh my God, I almost shipped her to Africa. Girl! Of course we're not going to have a playroom. Mom needs a bigger closet, okay? But I'm not going to tell her that. I was like, no, I need a studio for work, but I just need more space for my clothes. Honestly, it's bizarre because I want her to have the values that I had growing up poor. But I want to enjoy my life because I worked hard for this. But I can't enjoy my life fully because my kid is going to be spoiled. We're at a point where if we go on holiday and there's no beach and there's no pool, she thinks it's not a holiday. She thinks we're just going for work. I never traveled when I was a kid. I mean, I did the whole boat ride to come to Norway, but that's hardly a holiday, right? That was terrifying. So I think that's something parents don't talk about, how you can, you can't actually relate to your kid. So there's a lot of patience. But thankfully, I have a lot of rich friends. So I just call them. I'm like, guys, middle-class people, please, how does this work? And they tell me. I find that aspect to be extremely interesting. And it's very much like I'm very involved in her life, and I feel like my generation they're way too involved. If my kid has a little problem, I'm telling you, this tiniest inconvenience, these kids, they blow it up, right? And they make it such a huge deal. It's like they need a crisis team, and they call mom and dad and uncle and everything to sort out their issues. I mean, we never did any of that. I can't imagine bothering my parents with my problems, right? You sort yourself out. And if you can figure out, you ask your brothers or you ask your siblings. And these kids, they snitch. They snitch. Bunch of snitches. I mean, you can't teach your kid to not snitch, but kind of like, girl, keep a secret. Like, when they fight, her friend's going to do something that's not allowed, and she comes straight to mom. Like, Mom, do you know what she did? I'm like, oh, I mean, I'm loving the tea, but still, I could never do that. I mean, my friends would do horrible things, and I would never repeat it because you keep the secret. And I think it just tells you that my girl is not from the street. She would never survive. Another thing she asked me one time was like, I was telling her about my friends and my childhood friends. So I told her like, oh, me and that girl, your aunt, we've been friends, da da da. And then my kid said, oh, I wish I was the same age as you and we would all play together. Girl, I would not play with my kid. I would rob her, but I would not play with her. Like, no, she doesn't understand. I'm your mother. We're so different, honestly. Like, I think if I was her age now, no, honestly, the class difference is too much. I wouldn't play with her. I honestly do not think we would even be friends. But there are some, I don't know, it sounds so bad saying there are poor kids in her class, but I don't know if there are poor kids in her class. The majority of her friends, they do the same. They seem like they live the same lives. They all go to holidays and they go into the city and have dinners. They go these shopping trips together and etc. But sometimes to teach her a lesson, whenever she asks me for money, because now she's so young, whatever she wants, I can afford it, right? So whenever she asks me for something just for tradition, I'll say I can't afford it. Like I'm giving her character, you know? She's like, Mom, can I have this new toy? Do you know how expensive that is? That's 50 kronor. I can't afford this. Mom, I have to do another shift for this kind of money, right? And whenever we're going on holiday, I pretend like I saved. I didn't save. Wallahi, I didn't save. I'm just living life. I just use my card. I'm very irresponsible with money. Don't listen to me. But anyways, I tell her like, no, you know how important this holiday is. Mom had to save up. I had to work so hard. I don't work hard, if we're being honest. I worked hard when I was in healthcare, but in fashion, I'm thriving. So I just tell her like, no, you know how much money this is, da da da, just so she can appreciate it. But nobody teaches you about this, right? Because when you have kids, you think it's all fun and games, right? You just teach them how to walk, how to this, but you actually have to teach them how to be a human being, right? Like a decent human being and a personality. I'm terrified that when she becomes older, I still find her boring. Then what do we do? Imagine like your girl's a teenager, kiki, you go shopping together and she's not fun. Then what? Like, it's not like you can return or exchange for another kid. I don't know, a lie. It worries me because when I was growing up, I never entertained. I didn't used to entertain my parents when I was a teenager, so I don't think she would either. But sometimes I feel like I'm a cool mom, so of course she would hang out with me. You know, delusional. I don't think she would. Right now, they're very much into like sports, right? So I have to act like I care about sports. So that's also something that pisses me off. My parents never showed up to anything. No one knew who my parents were, right? If I was orphan or homeless, no one actually knew because my parents were not around. They don't have time for this. They have 2 jobs and they have 10 kids to raise. They're not going to show up to anything. So now, if my kid, she plays soccer. I know. Every day I'm in pain. She plays soccer. I hate sports. She does that. She does football. Whenever she has a game of football, I ask her and I said, is it okay if mom don't go? And she's like, well, you can do whatever you want. She's so manipulative because that is going to make me feel guilty. So, of course, I'll go watch. But, you know, regular games, I watch like 5 minutes of it. And the problem is my kid is actually good. So sometimes she actually scores and then you have to pay attention, right? Because whenever your kids score, they like to run to you. I don't know why. They should run to their teammates. But they run to the parents for some acknowledgement. I don't know. It's all too much. But you have to pay attention. And football lasts for so long. I'm telling you, it's so long. And they're kids, so everyone takes it very seriously. But that's also something that I try to persuade her. I never introduced football to her. I never introduced any sports to her. I thought maybe she'd do like... I don't know. I was hoping she wouldn't do anything, if I'm being honest, so I don't have to take her. But she figured sports because she has friends and they were doing that. It was either that or horse riding. But I don't want her to become like one of those horse girls because they're insufferable. So I thought, no. So I just told her horse is expensive because I assume it is. I don't know how to deal with it. So now she's doing sports. And that's also something that takes out of you. You think your weekend is free. It's not free. You come home, you're chilling, and Sunday morning, 8:30, I'm standing somewhere making waffles. It's crazy. It actually is. It's horrible. So you do it because of your kids. I mean, the sacrifices we have to make for our kids. I would give her my liver and everything, but I have to give up my sleep. Even when she's 8, I was not prepared. Another thing, I don't know why I'm bitching about being a parent, but listen, somebody got to listen to me, and I don't have a therapist, so it's you. Listen to this. Other parents is also something that's so not fun, right? Because I think some people, their kids are their hobbies. My child is not my hobby. She's just my child, right? She's her own person. And I know right now I'm talking about her, but usually I don't talk about her. So if I meet other parents, I only like my kid. I don't need to know the details of your kid. There are very few children I actually enjoy being around, right? So other parents, they start telling you stories about their kids, and the stories are boring because all kids are boring. I'm like, I was suffering with my kid and I have to listen to your nonsense. It's horrible. But you can't say it because parents are like, they're like the mafia. They take their children so seriously and they take their job so seriously. It is serious, but it's only your hobby. You can't go around thinking everyone is interested in your parent, no, your kids. Right? So they tell you stories about their kids. So they start saying like, oh, does your kid do sports? I say, yeah, she does. She does football. Oh my gosh, we're going here. And the stories are endless. And they can't read a room. They can't, like, it's like their social antenna doesn't exist when it's about their kid. Not everyone is enjoying this, Susan. Please make this stop. But you can't. And the worst thing is, if that parent, so let's say I go to the sports. Oh my God, I hope the parents don't listen to this. But you go to the sports, right? And you're watching the sport. I'm already suffering. And then you're standing there in line, and then you're like, ooh, goal, yay, woohoo, right? And then the parents on the side talking to you about kids. I don't know why I'm so negative, but they're talking about kids. So I'm already double suffering. And you have to like, oh my God, did she do that? Oh no, that's so funny. Your kid is funny. No child is funny. But yeah, that's also another thing you have to do. I remember when she was a baby, we'd go to these parks, and I had a rule for my kid. If there are other kids, mom's not going to play with you, because they need to have social skills, right? You need to be able to play with other kids. And mom is going to sit here and drink her latte. I don't know why you keep coming to me. So when we go to playground, that's my time off, right? And my kid, she's very social. So she'd be playing with other kids, and I would just sit there, listen to something, or read my book. And when I go to the sports, I also bring a book so I can watch it, because sometimes they have these games that are back to back, and you have to be there for 5 hours. What am I going to do for 5 hours? Not watch kids play soccer. I can tell you that much. So I bring my books and I'm reading my books. And these parents, they give me dirty looks. And sometimes, I'm in my fur, I'll be in my leather and my knee-high boots, because if I'm suffering, I got to look good. It gives me through the pain, right? So some people, they drink alcohol. Other people, they do volume, they pop pills. I wear leather boots. Leave me alone. So I'm standing there and I look out of place, and that's how I am. I'm always out of place. So these parents, they already do not like me, right? They're looking at me differently, and I don't enjoy their conversation about their kids. So it's all very challenging, but it's super fun. I was saying something when I jumped to this. What was I saying? Anyways, I don't know. Maybe I should say something positive about being a parent. No, honestly, I think it has made me patient, right? And it has made me realize how different life is. And sometimes I'm super grateful that her life, that my parents' dream and aspirations have finally come true. Like, my mother only wanted what's best for us and for our lives to be better. So now I want her life to be better than mine. But so I'm kind of thinking, like, what is she going to give her kids? I hope they don't become even upper high class, because then I would have nothing in common with my grandkids. I'll probably just own them, right? They're like, oh, grandma, why is your villa so small? Ah! Can you imagine? Like, they come to my house and they're like, where's the rest of it? No, I'm not keeping those grandkids. I don't know. I think parenting is it's so interesting. And hopefully it'll get better. But I don't take myself with her too seriously, but I do call my mother now more than ever. I call my mom for everything, because I feel like the problems that I have, I can't imagine my mother having them. But she really did have them. So right now I'm working on trying for my kid to stand up, not only for herself, but to other people, because there's a bit of a peer pressure. But I always thought that I am who I am because of the way that I was born. I didn't know there was a whole project behind it, right? So I didn't realize that everything that I am is because this is how my parents raised me. And you understand that when you see other people who are not raised well, right? So when you see people who are complete douchebags, or like in the workplace where they're not considerate of other people, they take up too much space, or when you see grown people who are brats, honestly, it's because they were not corrected when they were a kid. There's a lot of people who are extremely self-centered, and they think the world revolves around them. It's because when they were kids, the parents never told them to shut up. Honestly, like, if somebody's already talking and you keep interrupting them and you think your story is more interesting, it's because at the dinner table, your parents never told you to shut up and wait for your turn. Because that would happen to us, right? So we were all these kids, and while we were talking, maybe the older brothers would interrupt the younger ones, and my parents would tell them to literally be quiet, shut up. It's not your turn yet. And that's also why I think it's so much easier for me to speak up, because I saw my parents doing it. But my kid, I only have her, so there's no one interrupting her. So sometimes I do it to give her some character. Yeah, when she's talking, I'm like, hey, no, listen to this. And then I tell my story. She's like, no, Mom, I was saying, no, I'm saying, be quiet. So sometimes I have to borrow other people's kids. So yeah, it's very important to raise your kids to be considerate of others and to God, just to be decent human beings. I never knew the effort behind it all. Yeah. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing. I just pray to God that she's a good person when she grows up. Or else, I mean, what can we do? I see parents like, when you think of someone who's a complete douchebag or like a not a nice person, like a witch, do their parents keep in touch? I don't know why I keep thinking of that, but I find it so strange. Like, what if you do if your child is evil and they're not good to you? Do you keep them, or do you just block them? Because everyone else I would block in a second, but perhaps not my kid. I don't know. I don't know if this was helpful to you, but those are my thoughts. And to the parents that I know in real life, I swear I love your kids. I'm so sorry. I was just trying to be funny. Bye. Thank you for listening.